see what we have here. I think we'll get started. We may have some other people joining, but just so that we don't get too far behind in time, because we like to keep this to exactly 1 hour. So I want to thank everybody for joining today. We've got an interesting talk here with a PhD student, and I'm really excited to see a number of PhD students who are here on the group. So, or in this group, Jana May and Alphonse, and of course this is part of Bonaventura's research, and some master students too. And we have people from Sweden and the US and Rwanda, so it's really exciting. I want to remind people that it's better during the talk, you can put off your videos, and then if you have questions, you can put them into the chat, and then, yeah, and I'm just responding to Fabian, he just greeted us in the chat. And thanks for coming, everybody, and yeah, I'm just letting in some other people. Today we have a talk from Bonaventure Ntirugulirwa, I hope I said that properly, the suitability of native tree species in different regions of Rwanda with respect to climate change. I'm really excited about this presentation because we've had a number of talks about forestry and trees, tropical forest trees, restoration activities, and this is just one more that's going to add a piece to the puzzle. Hi, Anders, welcome, and Laure and Mapendo, glad that you're here. So this talk is part of a large group of researchers, and I think soon, in a month or so, we're going to have a talk that's going to be presenting this whole project. So Bonaventure will be talking about a component of it, but I've been talking with Johan Udling, one of his the supervisors on this project, and I think everyone will be interested to see the whole project together. So we see the different research components, and here's the Bonaventure going to be talking, and then we'll hear about the whole project all together. And we are going to be, sorry, there's more people trying to get in. We are hoping to also have a panel discussion about forestry practices in Rwanda and the use of indigenous species. So with the other thing I want to say before I pass it over to Bonaventure is that he works for the Rwanda Agriculture Board, and we're really glad to have somebody here who is working in one of the nodes of the center, and also doing PhD research. And sorry, I'm trying to enter some people into the room while I'm talking. So, and he's a PhD student in the biology department at University of Rwanda. So it's really nice to have somebody like Bonaventure that has very practical on the ground experience and is also doing this very interesting research, which has strong theoretical and applied aspects to it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bonaventure, and you can go ahead and take the screen. And again, anybody with questions, feel free to put them into the chat. You can also raise your hand, and then at the end, we'll have a nice discussion. So thank you, Bonaventure. And here's clapping, clapping, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I cannot share. Maybe someone can allow me, because it's mentioned that pots.
Yeah, sorry, Bonaventure, I'm doing it right now, sorry. Yes. There you go. Sorry, I forgot to enable it. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
You can see it, yes.
Great. Yes, as Professor Caprin introduced me, I'm working on a native tree species, and my topic is the suitability of native tree species in different regions of Rwanda with respect to the climate and the climate change sensitivity. And so we are working on, we are interested in a tropical mountain forest where is located our Nyungwe forest. And this forest is, these forests are located at the elevation above 1,000 meter above sea level. They cover approximately 80% of the total tropical forest area, and they suffer from deforestation with more than 150 million hectares were deforested between 1980 and 2012. They are not only suffer from deforestation, also considered particularly vulnerable to climate change. But some studies suggested that native tree species may be a solution to climate change adaptation and mitigation because they are adapted to local biotic and abiotic conditions and can provide sustainable ecosystem services. The potentiality of native tree species, especially in agroforestry and the forestry practice, they can support climate change mitigation and the adaptation, and they also can provide many ecosystem services such as sustaining the biodiversity, land protection against erosion, increase the crop yield, provide fodder and the other useful product for farmers, and can support local and regional hydrology. The objectives of this study are the following. The first is to assess native tree species suitability for plantation in different climatic regions, considering also projected climate change in Rwanda and the multifunctionality in the agricultural landscape. The second objective is to assess the contributions of different native tree species to different ecosystem services. And the third one is to evaluate the response of tropical mountain forest trees to warming. As a method, we have two kind of methods. The one is the literature, and another one is the experiment. Based on the literature, we selected 81 woody and useful species, native, and then from those literatures, we compared a database based on the literature data, and this database included the environment, trade, and ecosystem services. While in the presentation, we have an experiment at field level where 23 species early and late successional group from montana forests and the transitional rainforest, they have been planted to make experiment. They are under the project which we call Rwanda Tropical Elevation Experiment, Rwanda trees. And so I'm working on the growth and the mortality in relation to warming. We are working as a team. There is another team who is working on leaf thread, saprophog, and so they will present maybe later. And as I said, I'm working on the growth and the mortality in relation to warming. And so we have a conceptual framework which links between environment, tree threat, landscape, and ecosystem services. Among environmental factors, we have climate, temperature, precipitation, humidity, wind, soil, drought, nutrient, soil type. Landscape, you have vegetation type, elevation, topography, and land use. But we are interested in red highlighted, which is the precipitation, the climate factor, and in landscape, we are interested in the vegetation type and elevation. And those are linked with individual species threats, and which are also linked to landscape properties. About ecosystem services, we are interested in the provision, which can provide the fuel, timber, fodder, and medicine. They are also regulating function, which are carbon storage, climate regulation, hydrology condition, supporting function, which include the soil formation, nutrient, recycling, primary productivity. What about cultural function? They are recreational, tourism, aesthetical, and religious. And the database, which has been compiled, included the following information: environment and the climate requirement. So the environment, we have elevation, precipitation, and the vegetation type. About the plant trait, we consider height, seed and the fruits, trees, successional group.
Yes,
with
I
the density,
saw your email and I saw the draft, yeah.
and the growth rate. And the ecosystem services, we have the provision, as I have told, the provision, regulation, and the cultural. In our study, the provision services were aggregated into edibility, fuel, fiber, construction, medicine, and the chemical. And the method used to analyze the data, they were categorized into discontinuous variables with two possible values, elevation which was between less than 2,000 or more than 1,000 meters at sea level. The precipitation were between less than 1,200 or more than 1,200. What about the growth? We looked at the slow or fast growing, and the ecosystem services, we considered if they were documented and we noted yes or not. the statistical analysis of different type of variables, the discontinuous variables, we use the chi-square method to compare observed with expected, and the continuous value were analyzed against each other using the regression analysis. About vegetation type-based analysis, or species were associated to different vegetation type according to classification, which were at Kingd 2014. The book is called The Potential National Vegetation, PNV, and the Blush 2009. His book is the Vegetation Type. We used also another vegetation, which is in Ntirugulirwa in 1974. But only potential national vegetation type is included in this presentation. The vegetation type based analysis was made by comparing 3 species from Afro-Montana forest with species from Lake Victoria transitional forest, evergreen and semi-evergreen bushland and thicket, and riverine wooded vegetation. This is comparison between agro-ecological regions. As I told, this is the repair. There are 12 ecological zones, and from Blush, the first, for example, Imbo, in the repair, in Flash, it's included 2 regions, which is Suizi, Bugarama, Lowland, while in the potential vegetation from King, it's called the evergreen and the semi-evergreen bushland and thicket. And so each species belong to one among these because they are elevation, mainly precipitation, and mainly temperature. Depending on the requirement of each species, they were classified according to these vegetation types. And so 81 3 species, some species can be found, can be situated in Imbo or another ecological zone. And so all species, if you wanted to see, these species can fit there. We made one table. I don't know if I will show the table which has been established according to ecological regions. And so the characteristics according to the climatic requirement, each species has been classified to each suitable regions. And so there are the map which were used. This is the repair. Here is the potential vegetation, King, and this is for Blush. We made some analysis. For example, this, which relationship between a tree threat and environment. And so, as you see, it's clear that here the maximum tree height and this elevation in meter at sea level, and it has been observed that according to the analysis that species at 2,000 meters have the maximum tree growth. And when comparing wood density and the precipitation, it's shown that the wood density decreased with increasing precipitation. About the fruit size class, they are the same. The fruit size also decrease with increasing elevation. As also the tree height increase, the fruit size decrease. And if we look at the distribution of selected tree species between different potential vegetation, we observed that Afro-Montana rainforest is the most represented. Many species belong to the Afro-Montana rainforest and the Lake Victoria transitional forest. We can note that this is not 100% because many species can occur in more than one vegetation type. About the tree trait, which can guide where to plant trees. Of course, there are many traits, but the traits which were documented in the literature are the following. There is a tree height, tree fruits and seed size, wood density, successional group, growth rate, ecosystem services, and the vegetation type. In this figure, you can see that the species which is the best for charcoal making, it has a wood density which is very high. Yes. And here we have a different trait and the ecosystem services. We find that the services is directly linked to food security, which are the fodder production of small foods. And the trees from Montana zones more frequent provide the materials for building, handicrafts, patching materials, as well as shade for tea and coffee plantation. They are mostly very tall and fast growing tree species. And about the tree species from the higher elevation, they will support income beside the food production in agroforestry system, and thus indirectly increase the food security for individual farmers. And when we look at the tree height and ecosystem services, we find that tree height, the taller trees are used for timber production and handicrafts. And if we look at the seed size in relation to ecosystem services, we find that agroforestry and erosion control have a larger fruit size than averages. A species usable for food have small fruits. And most of them are due to the inclusion of several late succession species compared to those used in agroforestry. But we can say that for food production, the food production have a small seed size. When you look at the successional group, we can say that succession, which is here represented, which provide a medicine and the firewood. In general, early succession are the most important for ecosystem services. You can see in each ecosystem services, except here for timber production, they are almost the same. Food production, sorry, and the timber production. Another, they are the most important for ecosystem services. Handcraft also, handcraft handcraft also makes the exception, but in general, other successional are the most important for ecosystem services. And if we look at the vegetation type and the ecosystem services, we can say that the vegetation types for the Lake Victoria transitional forest provide the most valuable ecosystem services. And this list is the list of 18 species, 18 out of 81, which are the most important to provide ecosystem services in 4 main categories. There are others, of course, but these are the most important, which can provide ecosystem services in the main 4 categories, which are provision, supporting, regulating, and culture. And the second part, as I have told earlier, is the experiment. Experiment has been established in order to reduce the knowledge gap on the response of tropical mountain trees warming. And the native tree species from below and above 270 meters at sea level, and from different successional groups, early succession and the late succession were planted in the experiment. And as I have told the data, I'm looking for the saivoho and the growth and the saivoho of trees, and the data have been taken during 3 years. And so the results will be presented. Here is the map, because we use the 20 native tree species, 10 early succession and 10 late succession from high and mid altitude. From high altitude, we collected from Nyungwe, and from mid altitude, we collected seeds from Rwanda, which is in the middle, representing a transitional forest, and from Rwanda Arboretum. And so we have a tree site along elevation gradient. The high elevation gradient site is located at Sigira, at 2,400 meters above sea level. And the middle one is located at Rwanda at 1,600 meters above sea level. And the lowest is located at Makira. It's around the Tanzania border, which is located at 1,300 meters. This is the site characteristics and the treatment. We have 3 sites, as I have told. At Sigira site, this is the coordinate at Sigira, elevation to 1,400, and the temperature is between 17.5 and the high rainfall to 2,100 millimeters. And so each treatment has a 3 duplicate, 6 treatment, and each is a plot, or yes, has 3 6 treatment and the 6 duplicate, and together it has 18 plot, 18 subplot, sorry. And then we have a control, this low nutrient and the high nutrient. In this control, we make fertilization, which we call high nutrient. And at Sigira, because the rainfall is higher, we applied what we call rain shelter construction in order to reduce the rainfall at 500 and then 900 millimeters in order to make the same as at low altitude at Sigira, at Makira, where we add 900 millimeters and 400 millimeters. While at Rwanda, because at Rwanda is in the middle, we irrigate, adding water, 500 millimeters, and we also reduce water by rain shelter construction, and we reduce 400 millimeters in order to maintain also the same precipitation as at the Makira, where we add water to have the same precipitation. And we also applied for fertilization to avoid the confusion which can be influence the results. We have to maintain it at the same level, the rainfall and the nutrient content of the soil. This is the layout of experiment. Here it is at Sigira, but each site is looking like this, because it's called the K1 until K6, P6, L1, and the L6, 6 subplot, and the 3 plot. And so those treatments are different according to the requirement of to the design. The site at Rwanda is looking like this because the plantation has been established. Now it is the 3rd year, and so the trees are big enough, and the area photo is showing the plot design. at Rwanda site. Those I don't spend much time saying about the three species we used, because I have told earlier that we use the early succession and the late succession from montane rainforest, and the early succession and the late succession from transitional rainforest. Those five late succession and the five early succession, and then 5 late succession and the 5 early succession together make 23 species from 2 origins, which are from montane rainforest and the transitional rainforest. Those are some infrastructure. Is the weather station where we measure air temperature, air humidity, rainfall, wind speed, and wind direction, radiations, and soil temperature and soil moisture content. As I told earlier, this is the infrastructure for irrigation, where we capture water from here, and the water can reach the site from the tank, which reach the tank by generator and the pumps. And this is a kind of rain shelter construction in order to evacuate some water. And yes, these are such facilities from the nursery to the field, and now you can see how the plantation is big enough. This is at the Makira site. The trees now are bigger than 80 meters taller. As a result, we have some results showing the growth rate of established trees, where we can say here are the pioneers and the climax planted at 3 sites, Sigira, Rwanda, and Makira. And you can say that early succession, this is one side, Makira. We can say that early succession species grow better in one side. Of course, not all, except Makaranga kilimanjarica. Makaranga kilimanjarica, which is the species from tropical mountain forest. While several late succession has a low growth at high temperature, but not at all, because we have interesting results. If you look at the Ficus is from lowland, it's grown better, of course, suitable at one side. But if you look at Prunus africana from Nyungwe forest, or Podocarpus faricatus, also from Nyungwe forest, and Syzygium guineense, as well as Maricame. Maricame is also can grow better at one side. But those species are interesting because they are from Nyungwe forest, but they grow better at one side. When we look at mortality data, we can say that the mortality data, yes, the mortality is higher at one site compared to both side, because this is Makira. Makira, you can see that the mortality is not pronounced as at the Makira at one site. And you can say that the mortality of some species, especially climates, like Rhizophrym gorgonzanum, is higher at the one site, which we call the Makira site. It is the same at the Newtonia bushanani, but at the high elevation site, it's not the mortality is not high. As we can conclude as the following: 65 of the species occur in Afro-Montana rainforest in the Lake Victoria transitional forest. I have shown in the table. Another conclusion is that the trait of 3 species, height, wood density, fruit size, etc., varied between vegetation type and the climate regions of Rwanda. The third one is the 18 out of 81 selected 3 species provided ecosystem services in all categories, which are the provision, supporting, regulating, and cultural. The provision services were the most commonly documented. Among these, the medicine was the first, and then the construction, firewood, edibility, they were the most important, and they were the most common. The supporting, regulating, and the cultural services were less commonly documented. But there is a risk that ecosystem services with less economic benefit have received less attention, and therefore also have been less documented. The literature review show the potential of native tree species to provide valuable ecosystem services important for multifunctional landscape. The plantation experiment show that high potential growth among several native tree species have shown like some species from high elevation site are growing well in one site and elsewhere. However, there are also native species that will be threatened by projected increased temperature, especially the successional species. But we recommend continuing research can provide a guideline for selecting native tree species to support multifunctional landscape and food security. I acknowledge the founder of the project, which most of them were from Sweden. They are Sita and the farmers. And I thank you. This is our team, which the team who is involved in the project. And I thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bonaventure. That was a great talk. Really, really interesting data. And I'm really glad to hear about the fact that the forest is really growing up with the trees that you've planted at the different experimental sites and all those really interesting ecosystem services. So I'm going to invite people to raise your hand, and then you can unmute and ask a question directly. And you can also put a question in the chat room. So does anybody want to ask a question right now? To put up your hand, you can find it down below under reaction reactions, and under reactions, you'll find a hand. You can click on that, and then you can go ahead and unmute. But also, okay, we have a question here, Christian Nkurunziza. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Bona, for the good presentation. Among the plant traits that I saw that you analyzed is tree fruits. I would like to know, you said about edible. Among these among these species that you analyzed, do you think some of them can provide some fruits that can be consumed? If not, what can you suggest in further studies in terms of species that can be selected?
Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, there are many fruits which are edible for farmers, and so we have a lot of tree species which are edible, which are edible for people and for animals, and we want to recommend them to be domesticated at the farm level in order to improve the nutrition of farmers. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go to a question that Jeanne-May posted, and then I'll go to Antoine. So first from Jeanne-May, he is also doing his PhD on agroforestry species here in Rwanda. And he asked, please correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned somewhere that you observed a shift from Afro-montane trees to warm regions. I want to know if this dynamic change is linked to climate change, adaptation, or other factors.
Sorry, can you repeat?
You could also open the chat. You can see Jeanne-May's question, or Jeanne-May, you can go ahead and unmute and ask.
Good, thank you very much. Yeah, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Perfect. First of all, I want to thank Bonaventure for this interesting work, which is highly linked to somehow to my work. Well, I want to ask a question. Somewhere you mentioned that you observed a shift from the Afro-montane region of some species to the warm regions, and I was asking if this is due to a kind of adaptation to climate change of these three species, or if it's due to other factors. And if you say that it's due to climate change, how do you confirm this, that it is of this reason? Thank you.
Yes, I think it's acclimation, because we wanted to assess the climate change effect on the native trees, and some trees can adapt or can acclimate to warming, and so it doesn't mean that they cannot grow at where they come from. They grow also well, but they grow also at warmer side, meaning that the species acclimate well at warmer side, and they are better at warm side. They resist and they grow well, because some hypotheses say that the warming can increase the growth of some trees. And so it is still early, but acclimation is one, and maybe I cannot say that it's immigration, it's acclimation, and it's a response, a good response, a positive response to warming. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Antoine, we can go to Antoine.
Okay, thank you, Beth, and thank you, Bona, for the nice presentation. I would like to know what is happening at the beginning. You said that you chose 81 species from, I think from Nyungwe or whatever, and then for your experiment, you use 20 species, and at the end, in the conclusion, you come up with only with 18 species. So what are the others two? That is one. The second is, I don't know exactly the difference between Victoria Transitional Forest and the Afro-Montana. I think for
Rainy forest, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question. Sorry. Yeah. I told you that we selected 81 tree species from the literature from King 2014. Those trees are the selection was based at the usefulness and the importance of these trees. You know that to make experience is something which is very expensive. And so from the literature, we looked at the importance of these three species, and we assessed where they can be suitable in the agro-ecological zone. After knowing that these species are suitable to different regions, we selected 20 out of 81 because as I told, to make experiment is very expensive. You cannot use all 81 tree species. Those 20 as representative. 10 are succession and 10 late succession, and they are from different origin, from Nyungwe and from transitional, which is Rwanda and Rwanda. So the experiment was as to represent some species from this selected 81. I don't know if I explained very clear your question.
Okay, it's okay, but at the end, 18? What?
No, it was not 18, it was 20.
20.
Yes.
In the conclusion, you said 18.
Yes, 18. The 18 are the species which provide ecosystem services in 4 main categories. Because I told that there is a provision, there is a supporting, regulating in the culture. And so 18 species at the same time provide ecosystem services in all 4 categories.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And the difference, yes, the difference between the Victoria Transitional Forest and the Afro-Montana rainy forest, it's just a location in the climatic characteristics. the altitude, rainfall, soil, etc. So it's
Okay.
just location, yes.
Yeah. There's a question from Laura, and she asked, what was the source for your tree traits?
Sorry?
Laura asked, what was the source for your tree traits, the traits you presented about the trees?
Yes, we use the many literatures. And so, as I told you, there are many traits. But the traits which were documented are that I shown.
So they're from previous research sources?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
They are from literatures. Yes.
Good.
Because we use the many literatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another question, why some species failed to grow in the warm site of Makira while you had irrigation and fertilizer there?
Yes, I concluded that some species are threatened by warming, and those are species which cannot support the warming, which are not resistant to warming. That's why they die. They don't acclimate to warming. They respond negatively to warming. It's what I can say. Yes.
Good. There's another question from Mediatrice. Do you think Afro-montane trees would grow well in the warm regions in normal circumstances if it was not a controlled environment?
Yes, not all, but some of species from Montana can grow without any treatment. Amongst, yes, not all, but some can grow.
Okay.
As I have shown, some grow better at one side.
And then Tolan has a question. I know he's also studying something about forest ecology, I think in Copenhagen. Yeah, you can go ahead and ask your question, Tolan.
Yeah, thank you, Beth and Bonaventure and everyone here. So I'm really happy and excited to see someone who is working with potential natural vegetation concept, because my subject or my thesis title is somehow related to his research, but there is little difference. So, and I was excited to see that they have those, even if I joined later, but I saw here he's working with 12 vegetation types, but normally in the PNV map of Rwanda, there are 16 vegetation types. So my question is this, and I want to know, when you selected your tree species for experiment, did you consider the issues of species coexistence and composition? This is the first question, because when you see those vegetation types in Rwanda, because of right now, the highest part of Rwanda is highly dominated by agricultural activities. And then my former title was just to validate the PNV map of Rwanda. And with the database that I had, was not possible because it was completely dominated by exotic tree species. And then this would not give us a clear indication of where we can go for landscape restoration by using indigenous natural species. So with your experiment, just I want to know if you have any concept about species coexistence and composition, because across those vegetation types, they differ from how the species coexist between themselves. And then in your experiment, have you, if you had this consideration, just to know a little about this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question. First, we compare the vegetation type which has been done by 3 authors. And so they were limited by 12, not 3 authors. We took 3 because we didn't want to take one in order to avoid the base. We took a 3 comparing from Delpierre, from King, and from Blush. Comparing those, we should have an idea of vegetation type according to different regions. And where we collected planting materials, we collected from Nyungwe. There is not a mix of species. Nyungwe is a natural forest where there is not exotic plantation. We also collected from Rwanda Arboretum, but those are not pollinated. Among the 3 species we collected, they are not risk to be pollinated each other. And so to be used this species to be used in the plantation, so we are not fear. We have some species which give some good results, and which can be used to make plantation at field level, at farm field, according to the literature, to the result from the literature and from experiment. There are some species which grow better, and which can replace or which can compete with exotic tree species. About the growth rate, they are fast growing native tree species, and there are tree species which grow better than or grow at the same level than exotic ones. Thank you.
Right. Let's see, we should probably end soon. There were so many interesting questions and comments. So I'm going to go to, in the chat, a question from Anders Pedersen. I see no valid comparison among the species from a 1.5-year trial and only conclude on mortality. So he's saying we need more on growth, ability, yields. Why not any exotics included? It could have been a good control. And what about economic analysis? So I don't know if you want to comment on that. Also, Laura asked if from your data you have any recommendations for restoration projects?
Yes, I didn't get away the question, but economic analysis is not yet done. But we will harvest and we will quantify the biomass, and maybe we can make some economic analysis comparing the production of biomass. I didn't get away the second question is what? Can you repeat?
From Laura, she wanted to know about restoration based on your data.
Yes, we can recommend. We can recommend the policy to make reforestation according to the results, because when they wanted to make a restoration in one region, we, according to the literature and the experiment, we know which species is suitable to each region, and which species grow better, and which species can resist to climatic condition. And so, make reforestation and restoration, it is not difficult to recommend some species which are suitable for restoration in each region.
All right. I hope that answered the question. Then there's a question from Fabienne. 3 species that are late successional. That was Ficus, Toningii, Newtonia, Buchananii, and Markhamia. They had similar growth to the early successional species, and he wanted to know how you can explain those results.
Yes. For the Ficus, Toningii, and the Markhamia, yes, they have a fast growing at one side. I can say that for Ficus and the Markhamia, they come from middle and warm side. So it is not something which is not usual to have the good growth at one side. But if we look at some species like Prunus africana and the Syzygium guineans or Podocarpus faricatus, which are from Nyungwe natural forest and which grow better at the warmer side, I can say that as I have mentioned in my conclusion that some species are threatened by warming, other are not. Which species can resist more to warming? And these species is shown that they can resist to warming. And so we want to assess which species will disappear and the others will resist. And so the reason is that some species can resist to warming, for example, those Prunus africana, Podocarpus faricatus, and the Syzygium from high mountain forest, from montane rainforest. Those can acclimate and can resist. That is the reason. It's acclimation in the adaptation in the resistance to warming.
All right. I think if that wasn't clear, the person asking that can be repeated. That was Fabienne. There are a couple of other really interesting questions. I have to go to a meeting and I hate to cut this whole discussion off. So I'm going to leave the meeting, but I asked Tassien, one of our research fellows in the center, to host, and if he needs to duck out, I think Jocelyn can also take on the hosting. So I encourage you to continue with the discussion. There's a number of other questions in the chat room, and also I think we didn't get to Vestine. She has her hand up. So if I can ask Tassien, do you mind to coordinate the new, the rest of the questions that are coming up? Good, thank you. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Bona. My name is Vestine. I just want to ask, from your experience, all those trees can be recommended for agroforestry practices? If yes, how did you see their potential in terms of biomass production, if they can be incorporated with crops on farm, and especially looking on biomass production? Do you think they can be recommended, some of them? Thank you.
Yes, some of them can be recommended. Not all, but there are some species which can be used for fodders and for sticks and for firewood. Some of them produce more biomass. And there are some analysis of nutrients done by my colleague. So we recommend each species according to analysis done. If nutrient analysis, and we should know which species can give some input to the soil and can take more nutrients. And the results are not yet published, but when the publication will be done, we can recommend. But
yeah, that could be interesting. If we have some native trees which may be recommended to be incorporated on our farms, that would be very interesting.
Yes, but we have some species like Maesa lanceolata.
Yeah.
Yes, it looks good at the field and it produces more biomass. Not only Maesa lanceolata, there are some Brideria micrantha and Brideria bridifolia or Dombea torrida. They produce more biomass, and they don't compete with much with other trees. But we still have to look at the soil analysis done and to make a conclusion and to make a recommendation. But it's still early.
Yeah, my second question is, when you were presenting your results, you said wood density, some species, the wood density was decreasing with the increasing precipitation.
Yes.
What does it mean? I didn't well catch that relationship.
Yes, it means that wood from high altitude, where the precipitation are more than 1,200.
Yeah.
The wood density of desert trees is less than wood density for the trees which are growing in low altitude where the precipitation are less than 1,200 meters. Meaning that when you increase the precipitation, you decrease wood density. That is the result from literature.
Thank you.
Bonaventure.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Anders Peterson. Can I speak?
Yes. Yes.
I see. I mean, it's good you compare a big number of species of indigenous or native species, but I don't see how you can. There's no quantification of yield. There's no comparison of yields among those species. There's some qualitative comparisons, but there's no really quantification. And from the young trials, you cannot really estimate anything on a mean annual increment or something like that. I know you have from literature, you may have some maximum tree heights for different species, but if we don't control the age of the trees, then you cannot conclude anything on the mean annual increment, and we cannot compare the species, let's say, productivity. So I think that's a big shortcoming. I mean, there's a lot of observations, qualitative observations, but when it comes to quantification, economic analysis and comparisons, I think we don't really have many many good guidance here. On top of that, there is not a single exotic comparison as a reference. Maybe we should have included at least one or two or comparison ability. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. You're right. We didn't include the yield because, as I told you, we used the literature, and the literature we used. We didn't find the yield of those species. They are less documented, but some of them are fast growing and not fast growing. But as we are using the plantation to make an experiment, we will quantify, not all, but we will quantify the representative species, and we can say something when you use a successional group, etc. We can have an idea of the yield of some of them. You know, indigenous native tree species is not very well documented, but at least we know that this species is suitable to these ecological regions, and we will continue working on this. Thank you for your comment. Of course, it's very important. And as we continue our research, and I noted that from your recommendation to compare with exotic species, as we are in forest research, we can continue our research, making comparison between native and the exotic. Thank you.